So we're back for episode 2. Um, and I've been working on a new book. Not a new book, my first book. As you guys may or may not know, I've been working on this book for some time now, and we're getting closer to the period of its release. So I wanted to come on here and talk about um, not the process of writing the book, because you'll get that from the book, but just some of the key themes and key topics in the book, because it was a long process for me. But it was a very introspective and necessary journey in my development. Um, so the theme of the book is empathy. The overarching theme is about empathy. The book is called The More You Know. Um, and it's not like, if you know, you know. It's not like that. But yeah, the theme is about empathy. And when I first got the instruction to write this book, I was just like, zero, no. Because I already knew anything about empathy. Then we're talking about my personal experiences, and we're talking about, like, the inner workings and all these, good things, which is lovely. As someone who's training to be a psychologist, that's what I do. That's what I talk about half the time. I'm very introspective. I'm very someone that likes to dissect a lot of theories and, just how people process things. So it's been good, but it's also been very, very eye opening to see just some of the challenges that we go through, and some of the things that we struggle with as we are growing and learning to be empathetic people and whatnot. So I kind of wanted to touch on some of those things in this episode, and maybe talk more about the book if I can. I don't know. I probably won't. But anyways, so yeah, the book is called The More You Know. The theme of the book is empathy. And my understanding going in was, empathy is putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. That's what we always say, put yourself in their shoes. If you were to walk a mile in their shoes, how would you feel? What would you think? And all those things. And it's really great. And that's like a core idea in it, but that's not all that empathy is, right? Empathy is, it's so much more than we realize, and it's very intertwined in the way in a lot of our motivations for doing things, in the way that we process things, and it's very intertwined based on how we were raised, some of the things that we experience, and just our natural temperaments that we were born with, and that, our nature that we were given. So empathy is definitely something that can be nurtured, but a huge part of empathy is your natural nurture, your nurture. um, and so that's why you hear a lot of people say, "Oh, as an empath, I'm an empath." You know, we're just empaths. I just feel things, and it sounds so corny, really. And it just sounds like an excuse for being very emotional. And a lot of people use empathy as like a reason for being emotional, or being able to read people, or being able to, oh, I just get them so well, or oh, I saw that coming, da 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 da. They use it as a way of assuming a lot of things about people, but that's not really it. Empathy does allow you to know people more, which is a lot of the theme about the book. But empathy requires you to get to know people more. It requires you to be very intentional. Empathy, like any of our other emotional states and emotional motivations, they are meant to beautify our lives and to add color to our lives and to make our relationships and our connections with people very dynamic. But they're not meant to control and completely lead the things that we do or say with other people. In a lot of our interactions with people, it's great when we can add some drops of empathy, and when we can incorporate that. But we also have to be mindful that empathy is great and it's a skill, but there's always extremes to anything, right? Just like happiness and sadness, they're all necessary in various areas and at different times and seasons. But there's times where happiness can be inappropriate. Sadness can, be overdrawn. So a lot of, let me not say a lot, but in writing this, I think what I really struggled with um, was balancing how to be an empathetic person and how not to be a people pleaser. Yes, because empathy and people pleasing are not the same thing. They're just not the same thing. Just because you're nice to everyone, which if you know me, I don't really believe in niceness. Kindness, yes, I don't really believe in niceness. It's like, all right. But you being nice and you being agreeable all the time, and you bending over backwards, or doing certain things for people because you just feel that they would appreciate this, and you just feel like they would want this. You just feel and you feel and you feel. Everything is led by your feelings, is not necessarily empathy. A lot of that, and it doesn't even have to be in like in the emotional mushy way, because then you're making that more of a feminine trait or something that women do. But a lot of men do it in their own ways, feeling like they're accommodating people and they're helping people and being empathetic, but really just being a people pleaser. And so that was something that I really struggled with in understanding myself in this situation as I was writing this book, and communicating that, and really trying to differentiate things of empathy and sympathy, and understanding the part that compassion plays in empathy, and understanding the role of self-control, and understanding the roles of discernment, and just different things like that, when it comes to empathy, because it is not just about how you can feel another person's emotions. It's going into their experience. Like, it's so much more than their emotions. There's the thought realm, there's the experiences that they have. There's so many things that go into being empathetic, because being sympathetic is feeling sorry for somebody, and looking at their difficulties and extending compassion to them in like a, oh bless you, like a sorrowful way. Whereas being empathetic means that you've taken the time to really examine their situation, to really examine their character, to examine their understanding, their perspectives, all the things that create their perspectives, their experience in that time, the things that are worrying them, the things that might be embarrassing for them, the things that they're hopeful for in that situation. And that kind of allows you to anticipate how to interact with the person in the most appropriate way. But I find that when we're young, and or even as adults, when our empathy is not carefully managed, we tend to lead into a bit of people pleasing. Because if you're someone who's naturally sensitive to people's responses, their emotions, their thoughts, if you're always eager to understand and you're curious about what someone is experiencing and how they're experiencing things, you're going to consistently put yourself in a place where you are always beholding them in the mirror. You're always beholding them, and you're so focused and fixed on them that every little reaction, every little thing that they do now affects you. And if you see, that can be a really great and useful tool when you're trying to build relationship with people, but that can also be very harmful when you don't have self-confidence, when you're not secure in what you should do, not just what you feel is best to do or what you want to do. Um, and, a lot of the times people pleasing is actually a very selfish trait, because you do, we do these things not even necessarily because we always want to help the other person, or because we always, we're really considering what is best for that person, but we're ultimately, if we're being real, we're considering what is best for ourselves at the end of the day, after our interaction with this person, that if I was to do this, they would like me more, or if you grew up in a household where there was very strict expectations of you, or you were only rewarded or praised or commended when you followed the rules, or when you behaved like a proper child, you didn't bring your parents stress, or you didn't bother your siblings, then you're going to be programmed in a way where you do things and you respond to people in a way that pleases them all the time, because you're afraid of being rejected, because you're afraid of, the consequences that will happen, or how they'll yell at you, how they will debase you, how all the different things that they could say to you or that you could experience in that time: embarrassment, shame, guilt, sadness, loneliness, all those things. So you've pretty much programmed yourself, or your environment has programmed you to be very sensitive and to be very alert to people's reactions and responses and emotions. And just like, I know a lot of people say, if you come from like an ethnic or African household, moms, there's always like looks that moms give their children, and like you become so attuned that, if she does her eyes like this, you already know that this is what she means, that it is not the time to play, it's not time to be, joking around. And it's like things like that people can misinterpret as being empathetic or being very understanding. And it could be that, but there's also a mix, and it's also layered with, you've maybe been traumatized, or you've just been raised in a very constrictive environment where you only do the things, or you intentionally do the things that will ensure you don't receive any backlash or bad consequences. And so I realized, while writing this book and while doing this self exploration, that I've had to unpack and go through the layers of like, okay, what are the things, and how do I actually express or walk in empathy in a genuine way that has no strings attached, essentially. And not to say that it's, I don't know, I could not say that it's always going to be like that, but how can I walk in a way that is genuine with no strings attached? And how can I identify the times where I'm really people pleasing, or I'm doing things out of fear, or I'm being nice, or being accommodating, or considering people's emotions and their thoughts and feelings out of fear. And you'll find that a lot of people that are also consider themselves as empaths may also consider themselves as overthinkers, because they're always thinking about what other people are thinking. It's like their mind is never clutter free. Their mind is never clear enough to consider what is an appropriate balance, what is an appropriate response in this situation that is good for me, but also does show love and does show honor to this other person. But it's always about, okay, if I make sure this person is okay, I'll be okay, because naturally I'm not okay with myself. But when this person validates me, I'm okay. You see where the issue lies in that? So empathy is often misconstrued in a lot of ways in our society. And in writing this book, part of what I want to communicate and what I just wanted to explore for myself is being able to be more confident in who you are and how you deliver yourself, how you communicate, how you engage with people, and learning that there's a balance, you have to strike a balance when being empathetic. One of my favorite lessons that I kind of took out of this, I'm not sure if it's Carl Rogers. It might be it might be Carl Rogers, that speaks about empathy. If it's not, then disregard who I'm quoting. But there's a famous psychologist that quoted, empathy is like putting yourself in someone else's house or something like that, or like putting yourself in someone else's life. And I'm just like, that sounds great. And it's, you know, it's beautiful because you get to, when everyone knows that people's homes and people's houses are very intimate places and spaces that tell a lot about the person, right? So if you're in someone's house, you get to learn a lot about them. You learn their routine, you learn the things that they love, you learn you know, the things that they want to keep hidden from people. So it's like you really get to know a person. And the more you get to know and the more you know a person, the more you're able to relate with them and communicate and show love and show up for them in different ways, right? However, you'll never know a person's house better than they know themselves, you know. And when we see scenes in movies where it's there's the protagonist and the antagonist, and the antagonist is, you know, there's a chase or something, and let's say they enter a warehouse or a field or a farm, and the protagonist is like, well, I have the balls in my court because I know this place better than they do. And they're able to navigate the ins and outs of the maze. They know where the hidden spots are. And that's what it's like when you want to engage in empathy, when you want to step into someone's house, as the psychologist says. It's great because you get to see and you get to try to have an understanding of this place. However, you'll never really understand because it's not yours. It's not your space, you know? And if that place were to light up, were to set on fire, that person in their home, in that space, in that situation that's uh, troubling them, they might be in a dire situation. However, they know the exits. They know the places that they can go. They know, you know, where the floorboards are very sensitive, where they're already creaking and breaking. They know how to get around. You don't know. You don't know how someone's inner world is built. You can try to understand, but you really don't know. And so it's good, but it's also dangerous because you put yourself in a situation where once that person gets out, now you're the one that's trapped in their house. Now you're the one that's trapped in that space because you tried to enter and you tried to put yourself and live in that experience. But it's just like, you bring yourself close enough and you try to get an understanding, but you also have to be aware that these are two separate things, right? In psychology, we refer to this a lot as like transference and countertransference when you deal with a client, and you have to really connect with them. As you know, you're hearing their stories, they're telling you about their experience. The client wants to feel heard, they want to feel seen, they want to know that you're listening, that you understand. And so it's important that we really connect with them, but it's also important that you separate. And you know, oftentimes as like a cooling down exercise, it's good to identify the ways in which you are not like that client, in which you are not like their situation. You don't identify with that because it's very easy to take on a lot of their burdens and a lot of things that they poured out on you because you just feel so bad and you just connect with them so much. Maybe they're talking about a situation with a family member that you really resonate with and you had a similar situation. It's going to be hard as a psychologist to be objective if you're so focused on, wow, that sounds just like my aunt or my uncle that did that to me. Wow, that sounds just like the situation I was dealing with my sister. And so it's very, empathy is good in which it helps us to connect and it helps us to draw closer to people, but it can be dangerous in situations where you need to be objective or you need to guard yourself. You need to guard your heart, you know, as the Bible says, to not carry on the burdens and the weight, because our heart and our ability to love is very deep. We have a lot of capacity. God has given us so much capacity to love and to be in relationship and to connect with people. And really, it's a spiritual experience when we are able to connect. You know, the Bible says nobody knows the mind or the heart of the Father except the Spirit. And in the same way, nobody knows our heart as much as our spirit. But when we connect with people spirit to spirit, it's a different experience. You know, they now have access to our hearts, now have access to our inner workings. And so, without talking too much and giving you the whole book in this episode, um as I wrote this and as I went through this experience, I learned so much about myself, so much about so many instances I've been in, and you know, why I am and how I grew up. And it really is like my journal. It's so intimate to me. And I was afraid for a really long time to put it out there. And so I really thank God for helping me overcome a lot of that fear in letting people in to this world of mine and to this part of me. But I'm excited for everyone to get a piece of this and to um, really uncover their empathetic side and to grow and strengthen that skill and that muscle in their lives. And I think it's going to be a beautiful thing. So you can stay tuned. It's going to come very, 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 very soon. I know I've said this before, I think. Or I've mentioned it before, but yeah, it's going to come very soon. And I really hope you all enjoy it. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. Make sure you catch up on any latest episodes, and I hope to see you soon.